Welcome, everybody, to a new episode of the Big Sky Now podcast. I'm your host, Josh Amick. The panel looks a little bit different this week. We just got breaking news, that Mark is going to be out this week, possibly for the foreseeable future. He was on the sidelines and got rolled up on and broke his leg. So we wish Mark all the best. And who says reporters aren't athletes? But all jokes aside, get better soon, Mark. We hope to have you back. But we still have Fritz, John, and Ian here to break down the scores over the weekend. We're going to get right into our game of the week, which was UC Davis, Montana State. This game did not disappoint. UC Davis came storming back, got an onside kick, and were within 2 points to tie the game before Montana State got the stop and won 30-28. What did we learn about these two teams, Ian?
For a while, it looked like this game was just kind of a runaway in favor of Montana State. What was it, 30-8 at one point? I
Yep.
got to give some credit to UC Davis for fighting back and getting back in this game and ultimately getting within a 2-point conversion. But it was just kind of a little too late, I guess you can put it. Obviously down big early. Just kind of in the second and third quarter, UC Davis's offense really just went away. The two turnovers in the first half, and along with that punt return, it's just a little bit too much to overcome in that circumstance there. And in a close game, plays like that, especially on special teams, like we've talked about a couple of times this season, those are really big plays that can determine the outcome of a game. But for Montana State, obviously we learned they survived their first true FCS test of the season in a close game like this. Obviously they had they had that week 0 win over New Mexico. That ended up being a close game where they came back to win that. But for Davis, I mean, they showed that they belong, losing by 2 against Montana State. They just got to clean up some of those mistakes to really be able to win some of these big games coming up for them.
Yeah, I think that, like Ian said, we learned that Montana State isn't just getting an easy schedule. They're actually a very good team. I don't think that any of us are surprised by that. This team has shown time and time again what they can do on the field, and they went out and put it up against a top tier opponent in UC Davis. I feel like 45% of that, or sorry, 45 minutes of that game was all Montana State. We had the punt return, as Ian mentioned. The defense got to Hastings a ton. They forced pressure. They sacked him 6 or 7 times in that game. And Tommy Mellott showed what he can do as a quarterback with his eyes. I mean, that pass to Rohan Jones, yeah, Jones is wide open, but he's scrambling out to the left. He keeps his eyes up downfield and sees him open, is able to fire that long touchdown pass. So, I feel like we learned that what we knew about Montana State, we just kind of furthered that. And for UC Davis, I feel like we found out that they can compete when they're at their best. They weren't at their best for a lot of this game, but those last 6 minutes, they showed that they can go out there, they can put up points against anybody, and they can stay in a game.
Yeah, I've kind of got a little different take. I mean, it was 30-8 for not just at one point, for several points. It just stayed there. I counted up 7 straight punts. And so my take is that maybe Montana State needed to keep the foot on the gas a little bit more. Maybe that's credit to the Aggies finally figuring out some stuff on defense. The Cats and Tommy Mellott really are throwing the ball a lot better this year than they have. Used to be able to count on them to throw that fade route over and over again. Now they're branching out, and I liked what John said about that throw to Rohan. That was amazing. He also dropped a dime later in the game to McCullough, I believe. And Cats are as advertised. I just thought they maybe should have stayed a little more aggressive. And then, wow, did the momentum change in a hurry? And kudos to McCade O'Reilly for picking off that PAT pass. And then they still had to go recover another onside kick attempt, which they did. The kid from Missoula, Riley Norton, recovered it. So Cats are still for real. Davis is still for real. I think they'll both be top 4 seeds. I saw Davis drop to 5 in the polls. I didn't think they should have. I think they're good enough to stay at number 4. So that's where I come down.
Yeah, we'll see how the rest of this season shapes out, especially with the seeding for those two teams. It looks like Montana State is pretty much locked at this point. The other Montana team, the Grizz, Ayat appeared to be the quarterback for this game as he took all the snaps in the first half until he got injured late in the second quarter with about 47 seconds left. Then Fife came in and played extremely well, leading them to 4 straight touchdowns, I believe, at one point. And the Grizz got the win over Portland State 28-17. regardless of Ayat's health for future, should Fife be the guy the rest of the season and just lock in one quarterback, John?
Yeah, I'm gonna change what I said last week. Last week I was picking Ayat to be the starter. This week I'm definitely gonna go with Fife. He played lights out, I guess literally, because the power went out at Washington Grizzly Stadium in that game. So, but he went out there, he got that offense going after they didn't do anything in the first half. Ayat had maybe 50 yards passing. He didn't get some help from his receivers on a lot of the on a few of those throws. There
Good
were some
point.
good throws that just were
Good point.
drops.
Yep.
But there were times where he was throwing off his back foot, putting it in positions where he shouldn't be doing it as a quarterback to the far side of the field. So I feel like Fife he went out there and he earned that starting position for this next week, and I feel like that's going to be what Montana needs to do to roll with this for the rest of the season, especially if Ayat's injured.
Yeah, I think you noticed, Josh, that he warmed up at halftime, and
Yeah, yeah. So, for the people listening, I was at that game. Power went out. It was a crazy game, but yeah, he was warming up on the sidelines in the halftime, making throws and stuff. His ankle was taped up, so it looked like he appeared. He could have gone back in the game, but they decided to go with Fife. And another side note is Fife and Coach Hawk got into it on the sideline. It turned out not to be a big deal, but the sideline reports the words murmuring were saying that they were thinking about going with a different quarterback besides Fife because of that skirmish, but Fife just went out there and let his play talk. But go ahead, Fritz. Finish your thought.
oh yeah, I mean, I would like a lot of people. I wanted to eight ball, as we call Keely Ayat,
Mm-hmm.
to develop, be a developed quarterback and stick around and be in the starting lineup for 3 years or 4 years or whatever. Because it seems like everybody else in the Big Sky gets that, and the Grizz really don't. But Fife he's statistically and by eye test has just outplayed him, and it happened against Saturday. And John mentioned the drops, and there's a 3-play series in that second half. They keep coming back to, even though Portland State took the lead after this happened. I still keep coming back to the kickoff return where Fonts barely had a butt cheek down before the ball came out, and Portland State thought they had a fumble recovery, and Robbie Houck, Bob's kid, who's on the Portland State staff, was high-fiving everybody on the field. Got it overturned. Next play, he five fit a great ball to Fonts, same kid, and he made like this spinning attempt, and the ball kicked up in the air. And I don't know how Portland State didn't get the interception. The ball touched the ground as the guy tried to haul it in. And then on the next play is when Racanelli caught the slant and went 81 yards. And I know the Vikings took the lead back, but it just seemed like Fife was just on fire at that point, and it wasn't going to be denied neither with the Grizz. So I think he's a guy. The decision's above my pay skill, but I'm team Fife at this point.
Yeah, I do want to mention before we get Ian's last thoughts on that. The weird thing being at that game is the head official on that fumble return that Fritz was talking about, they ruled Portland State's ball. And then they all got together. Then all of a sudden it was Montana's ball, and they made them pay. So it was a very weird game to say the least. But the highlight of it was definitely the way Fife played. But Ian, what else you got to add to this game?
I'm of the same opinion. It's kind of tough to argue with the results, especially after seeing just kind of how the offense was looking statistically in that first half. I mean, I think they were shut out in the first half, if I remember right. And then Fife comes in and leads 4 touchdown scoring drives. It's tough to argue with results like that and after guiding them to the win. But like Josh just said, man, this was a crazy game. Back and forth against Portland State. Montana's a team that we all think very highly of, against Portland State, who's kind of in the bottom of those Big Sky standings. Lights go out in the game, and then that little scuff they got into on the sidelines. Just a little bit of an odd game ahead of a big one this week for Montana. But yeah, for me, I'm going to roll with Fife if I was making the decisions there.
Yeah, I do also want to give a quick shout out to Montana's defense because one of the questions I asked Hawk after the game is how they're able to contain Shashre, and he didn't really do much with his legs, and we know how talented he is as a dual threat quarterback, but they did a great job containing him. His ankles were pretty heavily taped, so he may not have been 100%, but at this time of the year, who really is 100%? Moving on to another great game that we had was Cal Poly taking the win over Sacramento State with a late field goal and fumble recovery to seal the deal. The Hornets have now dropped 4 straight, and with UC Davis on the schedule next week, it might as well be 5. Is there a chance Thompson is out as the head coach after the way this second half has gone, Fritz?
I think there's a chance. I mean, we've run stories about how Sac State intends to move to the Pac-12, and they're not exactly building a lot of momentum. They probably need a big name coach to come in and start really recruiting. Maybe Ty Taylor. Stanford's 3-7 this year, so Ty Taylor and Andy Thompson were together at Sac State when Sac State was winning 2 and 3 Big Sky titles, and then Taylor went to Stanford. And I said Ty, didn't I? I meant Troy. And maybe they're just better together, like Lennon and McCartney, than they are apart. And man, what a heartbreaker, because Conklin took off on that scramble, and it looked like he was going to score a touchdown. He gets pops, ball comes down and just sits there at the 2-yard line, and it just was barely out of reach of Tao Tolliver, and Cal Poly recovers. And the good news is I went 6-0 in the week because of that play. But man, what a heartbreaker for the Hornets. They've really fallen off from the upper echelon in a hurry. And yeah, I think Andy Thompson might be in trouble. He's a good guy and a good coach, brilliant coach, according to Troy Taylor. So hopefully it works out for him.
Certainly there's a chance. I personally just think it's a little too early to make a move like that. I think this is Thompson's second year as a head coach there, if I remember correctly. I mean, this is a team that was in the playoff last year, and they won a game. I think it's just way too early to make a move like that, even though there are some discussions about, maybe moving up to the Pac-12. But I'd like to see them stick around for maybe another year. If you don't see any improvement, obviously, then you have enough of a sample size to say, okay, this isn't our guy, and we're not going in the direction we want our program to. I think you just have to look back a little bit. Going into this year, they lost so much on their defense from last year. I think it's going to take maybe another year or so to get over that. So I think it's just a little too quick to make a move like that.
I feel like I'm kind of right in the middle between you two. I do think we're not quite at that point yet where we need to be firing him. But I think that hot seat is getting very, very hot at the moment, and maybe not a full season next year, Ian, but maybe after 6 games they evaluate and see, and if things haven't changed at that point, they make the move in the middle of the season. I could really see that happening. Like you mentioned, though, this is a team that, although they underperformed last year, they still got to the playoffs. They still won a first-round game, and they played South Dakota really tough on the road in the second round. They only lost by 10 down in Vermillion. So, Howard Tolliver came back from injury this week. They were still missing an All-American offensive lineman. So Carson Conklin's just a redshirt freshman. That also needs to be brought up. I mean, he's played really well for a redshirt freshman. He's got almost 2,500 passing yards. So I think that the benefit of the doubt needs to be with Thompson for at least the start of next season. But I think that seat's pretty hot right now.
Yeah, good little tidbit bringing up Conklin. I did not know that he's the way he's been playing. I figured he was a junior or something. But moving on to Eastern, setting records, scoring on every touchdown or scoring on every possession, and they won 77-42. You heard me correctly, 77 points put up by Eastern. If Eastern can figure out things on defense, and with their quarterback expected to return as far as we know, how dangerous can this team be in the Big Sky, not only for the last game of the season, but going into next year as well, Ian?
Yeah, this was a tough game to be a defensive coordinator or a defensive player. I mean, more than 100 combined points. Tough day, but good if you're an offensive player, especially if you're an Eastern Washington offensive player. Anyway, back to the topic. It's just something that's easier said than done, I think. I mean, we've been talking about Eastern's defense for a couple of years now on this podcast, and just kind of the, I guess, letdown, you could put it. Obviously, Eastern's offense is always going to be there. They're always going to be there to put up points. You look at it this season, most of their most of their losses, it's not like they're being held to 10 points or so. They're usually up there in the 30s, 40s, somewhere around that point. But yeah, I think it's going to take quite an overhaul of the defense, especially given the last 3 or so years where we've really just seen them kind of hold them back in these games.
Yeah, I think that was the shootout that we all expected over the weekend. Maybe not to that extent. I think that we felt there would be some defensive presence from Idaho State, but they've struggled with that this year. I don't think anyone could have pictured 11 for 11 for Eastern on getting into the end zone, though. As for Eastern, I think for next year, getting Vesperis and Altahir back would be are going to be great as long as they stay with the program. Vesperis of late has been just incredible throwing the ball with his accuracy. I mean, wasn't he 14 of 14 in this game against Idaho State? Or maybe so around there. But you're losing Jared
Yeah,
Taylor,
14 of
who
14. Yep.
uh, had 3 touchdowns in that game. I know they kind of split the reps at quarterback, rushing and passing. And then Efton Chisholm is going to be a big loss. Efton Chisholm the third, Fritz. I'll make sure I add that in for you since you corrected me over the weekend. But that's going to be a huge loss for him because Efton Chisholm's an NFL caliber receiver. It's like a kind of like a Cooper Kupp style loss in that regard. Maybe not to that extent yet, but um, yeah, it's going to be a big loss for the team.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned in the previous weeks that Eastern's the constant at Eastern has been great quarterback play, great offense, great receivers. I imagine they'll find a couple more. And then there's a time not that long ago where they had some dudes on defense. Guys like J.C. Sheridan, Greg Peach, and and that's why they won a national title in 2010 and played for it during the. I think they played for it during the COVID year. So yeah, they just I like the word overhaul that Ian used. They just need to get whether it's the portal or what have you. They need to get some dudes to play on defense, and then they'll even be more of a handful than they are already. And they're still a handful.
Yeah, I like how after the slow start of the season, they're definitely playing better. So at least they can go into the offseason with little momentum. And to mention, like what Fritz said, maybe that helps them with the transfer portal with how they finish the season strong. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with the rest of the season for Eastern. But last topic of the episode is Jack Lane returned to the Vandals for the starting quarterback to throw 3 touchdowns in a 31-24 win over Weber State. Freshman running back Art Williams, I feel like we haven't heard his name all season. He led the team in rushing, but what else stood out to you in this game between these two, Ian?
You certainly would have liked to see Idaho's defense stand up a little more, getting up 24 points to a very hot and cold Weber State team. Just would have liked to see that maybe points be a little lower. I think there was around 300 total yards that Weber State had in this game. But at the end of the day, a win is still a win. They get that 8th Division I win to lock up that get to that magic number for postseason. But I guess the other thing I'd like to see them clean up is just their third down offense. 4 of 12 on third down in this game. And they also went 0 for 1 on fourth down as well. So a little something to work on as they get ready for Idaho State this week.
Yeah, I'm still impressed by Idaho's ability to just kind of plug and play at positions. It feels like it's a different team that is out there every week with the quarterback position, the running back, kind of injuries and everything piling up. I know the defense has had injuries as well and kind of had the mixed bag out there. So yeah, it'll be nice for Idaho to potentially get some consistency with the players playing. I know it's been Lane and Wagner for alternating the past 3 weeks, so. At quarterback heading into the playoffs. But yeah, they've got to that magic number as Ian mentioned, and they're getting ready for that. Meanwhile, Weber State, it seems like once again just can't connect in a close game. There's always something that you can look back at, and this time it would be they get the interception and it goes to a 4-down turnover, and that goes right to an Idaho touchdown. So and that's the difference in the game. So you're taking a chance of plus field opportunity and you're throwing it away and giving up points right after that, and you end up losing by 7.
Yeah, Weber State continues to be snake pit. My hypothesis was that Jason Egg said, "Jack, you're starting," and Lane grabbed his helmet first and ran out there, and that's why he started. He's supposed to be the starting quarterback all year. I was shocked when I was watching get a little bit of the game that he only had 58 pass attempts going into Saturday against Weber, and he played really well. And I said it before, I love a good tunnel screen, and that was a great one that they ran with Hamper. Hamper seems to be the new Hayden Hawkins. That 74-yard tunnel screen he took, he broke a bunch of tackles, changed direction twice, maybe more. He's the real deal. I like what John said. I mean, it just seems like they plug people in, and they keep winning ball games. And they trailed for most of the third quarter to a Weber State team that did beat the Grizz and then has really augured in afterwards. But I still think Idaho's for real. They're well coached. They've got they're deep, obviously, and they'll get a home game. So good for them.
Yeah, I like how you brought that up, Fritz, because, Weber State did have a 14-10 lead, and then just another game that they can't seem to close out. That's been their Achilles heel all season. But that is going to wrap up this episode of the Big Sky Now podcast. Join us again this Thursday, where we'll break down this weekend's matchups, including a lot of rivalry matchups, and the infamous Cat Grizz game will be the main topic, as we're all excited for that one. So join us again on Thursday. Thank you to my panel. Mark, we wish you all the best. We'll see the rest of y'all later this week. And until then, take care.